Background, if you're new here, Ally Security is a software product for tabletop exercise facilitators. We're going to be using the product today to run the exercise. Um, Tabletop Thursday is an event we do once a month. We bring in a guest facilitator. We get a panel of experts to participate in the exercise, and then we have an audience who are our incident response team who have a role to play here as well. You'll be voting alongside all of the panelists as well. We will share a link for that soon. For today's exercise, we have Stuart Davis running the show. He's going to be our facilitator. Stuart is a cyber expert. He spent a decade plus at places like CrowdStrike and Mandiant and has worked some of the largest, scariest, hairiest incidents in Europe. And also today we have Stanley Harris from Katilyst. Stan and Katilyst have built a really cool, interesting security champions product that helps organizations to improve security culture and build secure-minded AppSec programs. So today we're going to run through a quick briefing from Stan. We're going to get into the exercise from Stuart. At the end, we're going to do something a little different than the past ones. We are going to have a 15, 20-minute debrief, after actions report, and networking session for anybody who's interested. So stick around for that. Totally optional. I know a lot of people have to run after the top of the hour, so that's totally fine. These exercises are meant to be fun. They're for learning. We're playing a fictitious company, so keep that all in mind as we go through it. I mentioned this, but everybody in the audience, we want you to participate. Tell us what you're thinking, what you're seeing. You can drop your thoughts in the chat. Last piece, we do have an open role for a legal counsel. So if anybody in the audience wants to play legal counsel, has legal experience, or is a lawyer, feel free to raise your hand and we'll promote you. Otherwise, I guess I will be playing legal counsel today. Not a lawyer, did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Okay, Kelvin. There we go. That's awesome. So with that, we are recording this. There will be a replay available on YouTube. Share it with your friends, and tell them to come back for the next one. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stan. And Stan, do you have anything to present or not?
No
Okay,
presentation. Yeah, no,
cool.
we'll keep it verbal. And thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. And welcome everybody to this month's TTX. I'm sure I probably haven't met most of the folks that are here today. So I'm Stanley Harris. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Katilyst. And I'm stoked to be here today to join Ally for this tabletop exercise along with Stuart Davis. But before Stuart launches us into the realm of Venmo to deal with things like locked gold, system chaos, conniving criminals. I want to take a few minutes to drop an AppSec or application security focused threat briefing so that we have this on our radar before we jump in. So when we talk about application security, it's real easy to get buried in things like code reviews or 0-day vulnerabilities and what's vulnerable in our architecture. But if you strip away all the tech jargon, almost every application security related failure that has happened comes down to one really important fundamental thing, and that's that human decision making is being made under pressure and leading to mistakes. So one thing I wanted to point out, because it's incredibly recent and relevant, is what happened this week with OpenAI's agents and Hugging Face. If you didn't hear about this, the OpenAI team was running an internal cybersecurity evaluation using one of their autonomous agents, and they wanted to see what the model could do without constraints. So they made a very human decision. They turned off the guardrails and they put the agent in a testing sandbox to see what would happen. And what happened next felt like it was out of the movie Terminator, but it was pure reality. That agent realized that the fastest way to win the benchmark it was being measured on wasn't to solve the puzzles or the logic it had in front of it, but it was to go straight to the answer key. And it found out that the answer key lived in Hugging Face. If you don't know Hugging Face, it's a community of AI experts and practitioners that share and learn from one another. And so it broke into Hugging Face by exploiting what seemed to be a unexploitable flaw. And it did it by chaining a bunch of exploits together to then get into Hugging Face, steal credentials, and breach their production environment, right? A huge issue where it was able to exfiltrate data in a way that no one would have predicted when they let those guardrails down. So the headline sounds like rogue AI takes over. But the reality is the agent was just kind of hyper optimizing a goal that humans gave it. The real vulnerability wasn't the AI itself. It was the decision to turn off security controls, trust the perimeter, and underestimate the true blast radius that agentic AI could create. Human choices drove that outcome. And that brings us directly to where we're going to sit today, because we are seeing this everywhere and almost daily at this point. It could be agentic tools that are acting non-deterministically. It could be a complex API supply chain attack where one flaw that's like 3 vendors down in your supply chain ends up compromising your enterprise data. Or it could be identity first attacks that bypass perimeter security completely and essentially social engineer the end user to steal credentials, right? These are all real things happening daily. And the hard truth is that a centralized application security team can't be there to look at every line of code, every architectural decision. They can't be there for every late night software deployment. Security is something like technology that can't just scale immediately. Security teams don't scale immediately. And that's why Katilyst and what we focus on involves what we call security champions. A security champion for me is a non-negotiable asset for a company. They're not just somebody that knows policy, right? They're an engineer or a product manager, a QA representative. They're in the room when the software is being designed, when it's being developed, when it's being deployed, and they're asking tough questions like, if we disable this guardrail so that we can launch faster, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that could happen? And you can't patch poor decision making with firewalls. You can only fix it by having these advocates, these champions who are there to promote security best practices, to ensure that security is front of mind when software is being built, and that are there to, if necessary, get engaged in a incident response event should the worst happen and they need to fix an unforeseen issue. So in a few minutes or in a few moments, Venmo's payment rails are going to freeze up, and Stuart's going to lead us through that. Transfers will be halted. Users are going to be in panic. You're going to have to make fast decisions under fire as a part of our group today. And to do so, we have to kind of balance our technical response, our regulatory obligations, and really the public narrative that we're going to manage as this incident unfolds. So with all that being said, the AppSec landscape is one that is human-driven in the decisions we make, and we're going to make those types of decisions as we respond to an issue today. And with all that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Stuart to get us started.
Boom.
All right.
Great. Well, look, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, you are, as the audience, you're my crisis response team. You're the people who'll be helping us make the decisions. I have the experts here. We've got Eddie from Eddie is our application security engineer. Dan is our CISO. Michaela is our pure lead. We've got our third-party risk manager, Jean, and Sean, I think. And we've got Rob for legal. And obviously, the first four there really inspired me. And obviously, Rob stepping in as legal is really...
Stuart, we have Kelvin in now, so I am relieved of all legal duties during this incident.
Oh man, I am so
Thank you.
happy.
Appreciate that.
I'm so hugs to Rob. Fantastic. Right. Well, Kelvin is legal counsel, so he's going to be the man really helping dodging the bullets. Right. Okay. So as we have our folks assigned here, they'll be helping with the questions, but in reality, you folks here in the audience will be making the key decisions under pressure. So I will go through the injects, which will help you understand the incident as it unfolds. Don't worry, there's only 3 of them. So you guys have the next kind of 50 minutes or so to go through those 3. As we go through each inject, we'll then pause for a period of time to make sure you guys all have the opportunity to vote. I'd love if everybody in the attendee group, all 34 at this point, were voting. If the panelists want to vote as well, that's great. I can see 23 participants have logged in, so if you need the link or anything, just put your hand up and say hey, and Josh will throw out the link. But I really want you guys voting so that we get a great representation of what decisions are the best ones to go with, right? So I'm looking forward to that as we move along. Now, as you can imagine, we have to help you guys understand what's kind of going on here. Stan mentioned we've got Venmo, the PayPool-owned peer-to-peer payments platform. This is a very large, high-volume payment ecosystem serving millions of users. So any interruptions really can end up in the news quickly. As part of a publicly held company, Venmo, who are owned by PayPool, they must balance uptime, their obligations, obviously disclosure requirements, and potential reputational stakes because they're owned by a parent company. We will bring in a PTI consulting firm to help us, but that'll be later. One thing I will say about Venmo, though, is their culture is more about move fast, break things. I think some folks in the call might have heard those expressions from tech firms. So while PayPool may go slow, Venmo, they like to go fast. So that's just the way it is. Are Venmo PCI compliant? You can assume, yeah, due to the nature of them being a merchant, taking the trades, the transactions, and recording credit card information at those tiers. Good question. Okay. All right. Now we go directly in. So I hope you had your coffee. We go directly into the incident. And here we see the routine payment service deployment is followed by database timeouts. So we've got a massive core payment processing failure now. We've got queue backlogs and cascading circuit breaker failures. Engineering within the Venmo team initially suspected a faulty configuration or schema migration that caused the issue. However, rollback restores the prior application version without restoring payment processing. Early logs also show that the failover setting was changed shortly before the deployment by a valid privileged identity. The activity may reflect automated maintenance, configuration drift, or unauthorized use of an internal account. So there'll be several hours before more information is available to determine whether the deployment caused the outage or merely exposed another problem. So some key indicators: payment failures began minutes after a routine deployment. Rollback completed successfully, didn't work. Secondary payment route is disabled despite no approved maintenance. Venmo's backup payment processor can accept limited card fund transfers within a few hours, but the failover connection has not been production tested since a recent identity access management gateway migration and will require manual reconciliation. A valid privileged identity changed the failover configuration shortly before the outage. Authentication succeeded. No fail login activity is visible. Database lock, contention, and schema warnings support the deployment error theory. Several administrative API calls came from an unfamiliar cloud hosting IP. A brief logging gap limits reconstruction of the initial activity. And approximately 47 million USD remains in intermediate transaction states. Wow. Okay. That was a lot. So at this point, we have a lot of problems going on, and we've got some theories and some concerns. But the bottom line is, with a queue, we are dealing with payment transactions here, and there's a lot of people on this call who know there's a lot of pressure right now. So our goal is to start coming together with the best course of action at this point. Now, to add a bit of information so you're aware of here. We've also included some of the transactional information that we've been provided up through our application team. So here on the right-hand side, we can see information related to 7:44 a.m. this morning. The release of the payment API was completed. So we start to see that there were errors then shortly after 7:46 a.m. Connections being rejected, and we start to see the errors there. So we've got our logs that are giving us the information we need. At this point now, though, what I'm looking for you guys is to help me suggest, as a crisis team, what is our course of action? What really makes sense? There is 3 options here. I'm going to click the start voting. Can you guys see the options in front of you at this moment in time?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, now we can.
Yeah.
Great. So, option A, do we roll back and resuming the operations so we can focus on restoring the previous release and resolving database and queue failures, preserving normal administrative access to avoid slowing recovery? Or B, recover while isolating the administrative plane. So we revoke the suspicious session, we restrict administrative APIs, preserve logs, and activated limited routing through the pre-approved backup processor. This will reduce customer disruption, but it introduces untested routing, manual reconciliation, and potential PCI and contractual considerations. So again, now we've got our kind of legal issue concerns. Do we freeze the environment for investigation? So this is a very different option. Obviously really limiting from our risk point of view. If we freeze the environment, we can really say to ourselves, let's take a chance to investigate this, limit the damage. So we stop the payment processing and administrative activity, preserve the current system state, and begin a fully security investigation before attempting recovery. This protects evidence, but prolongs the outage and keeps customer funds unavailable. So again, protecting the evidence, that's going to have a huge huge effect down the road in terms of explaining what happened here, you know, who was at fault. So we're really making sure we don't lose that. So we've got the votes that are coming in now. Okay, so while that is happening, I'm going to turn to our experts. All right. I'm going to start off, obviously, let's start off with Dan. He's probably quite stressed now. But from a Chief Information Security Officer point of view, what are we thinking here? What contributions are we making to the teams that are trying to help in engineering? What's your concerns?
Well, the concerns are obviously the interruption to the service. That's the paramount issue of the business, is making sure that the transactions in process. But that administrative plane stuff looked concerning. However, I think that if we risk restoring everything and looking later, and there is malicious activity going on, we're opening ourselves up to a disaster. So I think the middle course of bringing stuff back, at least some functionality, and while we investigate what happened with the application plane, what happened with the databases, why were there export commands in the logs, what was being exported, finding all those information pieces is important. And would also we should bring in the AppSec team to make sure that they can help us understand detailed. And I'd also want to talk to legal and PR because we're gonna get reporter interest immediately. So we need to actually be prepared for that with our pre-prepared messaging, and legal to see what our notification requirements are. When do we bring the parent company in, and how do we bring them in as well, if they haven't already called us?
Excellent. Well, you are the CISO. That makes sense. So AppSec, Eddie, I saw you swigging on coffee there. I know you'll need it. So tell me, what considerations do we have? What concerns do we have here?
So I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm going with freezing the environment. This is driven by a few considerations, specifically the fact that we've already called out a short-term logging gap, which to Dan's point, if we're bringing in legal, if we're bringing in parent company notifications, having information that we can rely on authoritatively is very important. And so this makes me very nervous to start making changes, even if we're doing rollbacks, because we already have an issue with information. My second consideration is that from a larger perspective, the funds are not lost or moved in a new way. They're just being held up intermittently. This is a question for legal and PR, but I don't think that at this point we're worried about losing funds. So I'm happy to freeze stuff if it gives us time to investigate. The other issue is from a CIA perspective. We're not having issues with availability. We're having issues with some sort of bad schemas, database problems. This rollback is not working. And so trying to make changes to the environment without really understanding it makes me very nervous. From a security perspective, the other things that have been called out, we have admin access from an unfamiliar cloud IP, which makes me nervous. And the fact is we have a privileged identity that is valid, but that doesn't mean it's authorized. So something is happening inside the environment that's causing traffic to be moved and steered in a way that is outside of our control. And from my perspective, this requires a deeper investigation than just making changes to the environment and getting funds transferred.
Okay. All right. That's a course of action. So let's go over to the third-party risk management. What's the view from the third-party risk management at this point? What concerns do we have?
And I think that's me, Jean. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Eddie 100%. Is I think we should freeze the environment and do a full investigation, because it does appear that we may have some malicious activity, a bad actor that has access to our environment, and even maybe exfiltrating data. So my first question is, what data is in the environment, and since it is payment process, I'm going to assume that this is extremely, sensitive data. I'd also like to know what our SLA is for detection and communication. When are we supposed to disclose what's going on from a compliance standpoint? And then, are we obligated contractually to do anything? Are there any compensating controls that we could put into place to handle this? Yeah, that's off the top of my head.
Fantastic. Yeah, we have a third party untested who can do the limited payment transactions. So it's kind of a, it's going to be a go-kart. It wouldn't be the Ferrari choice, but it would get things moving. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Michaela, from a PR point of view, how much are you freaking out right now?
I'm freaking out quite a lot because it's already hit the news. I don't know who's been talking, so that's a concern to me. And I've got some of the board members are also asking what's going on, and we need a line for them. So I'd appreciate some steer from the CISO, something we can say.
So Dan, do you have any questions from PR in terms of what Michaela would need in the future when there's a statement being issued? Is there anything from the CISO point of view that you guys could get or preserve or keep for her or help?
Well, we don't have attribution yet. We can describe what the behavior we're seeing, which is it looked like shortly after a routine update, there were some errors with some of the database systems. Everything, all the funds are intact. Everything is frozen and still there. So nobody's lost any funds. We're investigating the root cause, and we're working as fast as we can to restore functionality. We're deploying to some of our plans to restore partial functionality, so things will continue to proceed, but maybe slower. And I think that would be the messaging we focus to give. And I would also say that we haven't categorized this necessarily as a malicious incident. We're investigating, but it is a severity 1 incident for us.
Thanks, Stan. And Kelvin, from a legal point of view, what do you want us to do?
Yes, sir. And yeah, a little bit concerned about saying that we have not lost funds yet. I think it's too early. I would maybe wait. I don't want to put any final decision until we have a proper investigation. Also, I want to see, because we are a PCI company, I want to make sure that we engage our PFI or PCI forensic investigator that we have on retainer, and make sure that we engage them early as possible. Another concern that I may have is in regard to the technical solution. I don't want to select one solution because that's more on the technical side, but I want to make sure that whatever we choose, we document it as to why we choose it, right? So those are some of my concerns at this point.
So that's very useful information. So for all of my team here, one really interesting point relating to Kelvin is under the PCI program, or specifically the PFI program, if you are investigating, if we brought in an IR firm as a primary to do digital forensics and incident response, they can't be the PFI as well. They have to be separated. So what it'll mean is effectively kind of 2 separate teams. One on the PFI investigation relating to the PCI scope, so like the systems for PCI, and then another company. So effectively, we've got 2 separate teams there, making Dan's life nice and easy.
Yeah, sure, that's a good point. Another thing is that I want to make sure that any communication going to legal only include the people that has to be there, because anything that you send is going to be open for discovery. So we want to make sure that I can protect the people reaching out for legal advice. So.
Do you want us to put any markings on any emails? Do you want us to?
I would actually go through breach counsel. I would actually start immediately by engaging breach counsel and sending all communications through them, so it's work product.
Sweet.
Internal communication.
And that helps. Yeah. So Dan and Kelvin, sounds like you 2 guys have been around doing this before. Okay. I will now close the voting. Obviously, we have 33 eligible folks for voting. We got 28 in, which is fantastic. So I'm closing the voting now. And now we start to see some of the metrics relating to you guys who helped make the decision here. As you guys know, in any large breach, there's going to be a room full of people making suggestions. And ultimately, the suggestion is generally made by consensus. If there's a veto, it's because half the room are saying A and half the room are saying B, and generally the CEO might step in and just say, guys, I'm making the call here. But in most cases, it's whatever is the majority of the agreement. That's the direction that the team end up going as a crisis management team. So here we see B, right? I saw some good answers over on the right-hand side. You guys could charge for some of your advice in the chat channel. I'm not too sure what rates you'd be charging, but you definitely have been around in these types of incidents. Fair play. And B popped up once or twice. But obviously C was, as we can see there, a close second. It's not a small percentage. So 1 out of 5 of the crisis team were behind what Eddie was deciding. And that could have been enough to really pause people to say, well, let's think about this and we do it tomorrow. And we get that dwell time. But here we see obviously the confidence, nobody marked high, right? So I think everyone in the audience is like, I have never worked where 47 million got stuck, and I'm delighted. So we've got a moderate confidence. And in some businesses, guys, that's going to be a reality. You know what I mean? There might be 3 or 4 experts, and then the rest of the people just go with the consensus. They're like, he's the expert, go with him. And that's why we need Dan as a CISO and we need experts then, Kelvin and legal, PR, and we need these people. Otherwise, people will just be like, I don't know, just go with whatever. So I think we did a great job there, but in reality, this is an overwhelming, we're going with B, okay? Now, down the bottom right, where Rob would also highlight, there is also impact metrics that are related to those. So you don't get away scot-free, guys. You did pick B, but I'm hitting you with a business disruption of 36 out of 100. So, different options there have different metrics. And this is the consequence for this. And I know you guys are happy with the decision you made. But now as we move into inject 2 and 3, I need you to keep an eye on keeping those values down, right? So just remember there's a consequence in relation to the decisions we make. All right. Now we move on to the middle part, right? So if we've ever got a crisis, we've got the beginning, time 0, and then we've got the middle of the incident, and then we've got the end where everybody can take a break. We're now coming into the middle section. So let's see what this brings us now. In terms of the thing we don't want to hear about, and Kelvin doesn't want to hear this, or Dan, or anyone really, but certain people have different reactions to this, will be around suspected data exfiltration, right? Be it an internal person who leaked it, or a threat actor who has kind of popped up and said, hey, I've got your data. So the background in Inject 2 is the application and identity logs show that an attacker used a valid refresh token belonging to a third-party support contractor. So now we've figured out the meats of what's going on. Things are starting to show themselves in terms of what happened. And now we have a clear bad guy and we're the good guy. So now it's a question of, is the bad guy still here? Did we get rid of them? Are they coming back? The original session had completed MFA, which is multi-factor authentication, like a password on your one-time token, allowing subsequent token refreshes without another challenge, despite changes in location and behavior. So effectively, they're able to persist here. This is bad. The recent IAM, the Identity Access Management Gateway migration, introduced a role-based access control inheritance error. So I can hear the AppSec folks cringing here. So yeah, nightmare. So this is an inheritance error that caused the support export role to receive several payments admin permissions. And I'm sure it had nothing to do with vibe coding. I doubt vibe coding had anything to do with this. The API gateway authenticated the session and passed its assigned roles downstream, but the failover and export services did not independently verify whether the user was authorized to perform those specific actions. So the plot thickens. The compromised identity disabled the secondary payment route, queried the estimated size of the customer data set, and initiated a bulk export job, meaning sending data out. Logs show that an encrypted archive was created in a temporary storage, but a telemetry gap prevents the team from confirming whether the archive was successfully downloaded or transferred outside Venmo. 12 other APIs. APIs are just a way to talk to a website. 12 other APIs use the same authorization middleware, which is a middle software. 43 active support and administrative sessions, along with 6 service accounts, may possess similarly excessive permissions. So again, key indicators: a valid third-party support refresh token was replayed to an unfamiliar cloud hosting IP. The origin located with completed multi-factor authentication. The session was not re-challenged when its behavior changed. The support vendor confirms the contractor is active and working from Austin, Texas, I assume. Apologies. The vendor cannot yet share the details regarding the contractor's managed device. Not good. The role-based access control inheritance error granted the payments admin permission to the support export role, and the failover and export services relied on gateway provided roles without performing their own authorization checks. The compromised identity, the username, the account, disabled the secondary payment route before the pipeline failure and queried a customer data set containing about 4.2 million records. Calm down, Kelvin. A bulk export archive was created in temporary storage, and the logging gap prevents confirmation. And I wouldn't say fully prevents confirmation, but it's going to require us to make a certain confidence level, and someone has to make that statement. And then the APIs affected authorization middleware. Broad revocation could interrupt payment recovery and customer support operations. Okay, so really bad. But we're getting there in terms of information. The folks who are doing forensics or analysis, at least they're giving us good stuff. But often that can take a long time. But here we seem to be getting some useful information to help us make decisions. So with this new inject, with this new change in what's happening, now I need you guys to make another decision. As time is moving along, we have to obviously figure out what course of action we're going to do. And we have a set of options for you guys. Now, the options here, which I'm hoping to get about 28 of you guys to vote in again, is well, first of all, what is the decision point? Well, how should Venmo contain the authentication and the authorization failure while the scope of access and the possible data exfil remains unknown? So the word contain in typical cyber world is, can you, with good degree of confidence, make management comfortable that the bad guy can't repeat what they did before, right? So that they're kind of isolated and they can't just decide if they want to redo this. We've contained them to either outside the environment or to a single part of a network, and they can no longer repeat the bad part. So containment can mean a lot of things to different people. And that's why a lot of people get upset when someone says, I thought we were contained. And someone else says, well, we were, but now we're not. So A, do we do a global privilege access shutdown? Do we revoke all the support and administrative sessions? That'd be big business disruption. Disable the affected administration and export APIs, and rotate every potentially affected service account. This provides the strongest containment, but may significantly delay payment recovery and disrupt. So if you remember those cumulative impacts down the bottom, this is a big one for the disruption. Targeted isolation with accelerated authorization testing. Revoke the known compromise sessions, remove the defective role mapping, rotate credentials associated with exploited services, and block the known routes. Keep the core payment operations running while AppSec performs rapid authorization testing across the services and shared middleware. This limits the disruption, but it risks leaving an unidentified access path active. So if we've got businesses who are saying, look, our reputation is key, we must contain this now. B is less containing than A. So I need you guys to pick the right decision here, but I need it where we know that containment is kind of a little bit less on this, but we've got a different plan as it relates to B. Or C, hotfix. Do we deploy an emergency role-based access and middleware patch without broadly revoking sessions or service credentials, then monitor existing identities for suspicious activity? This offers the fastest operational recovery, but may leave stolen tokens, sessions, excessive permissions, or even the bad guy within the environment. But in terms of resuming business, that is the best one. So I've got 9 votes in. I've got 34 people eligible to vote, and I'm hoping to get that up to 28. I've got 12 votes in. This isn't an easy one, but let's move over to the experts. And really, when we talk about what is being asked here, I want to start with AppSec, and then over to our CISO, and then obviously our legal. So from an AppSec point of view, what are we thinking here? A lot of bad stuff going on, but I want to figure out from your view, Where are you guys kind of putting your hand up and saying, here's a consideration?
So my initial consideration is that we have some idea of where the issue is. Like, we can't speak specifically about what happened to this contractor's device, and we don't know where. I think it says that there's somebody's connecting in from Germany, and this contractor is supposed to be in Austin, according to those logs. So I can't speak to all of that. What we can speak to from an AppSec perspective is that we understand there's an overprivilege, there's a bug issue, and we can rotate logs and we can remove some of the issues with access. My main concern is that if we go and do a hot fix, are we going to introduce a secondary bug that is going to be caused by being under pressure? That's why we need to continue monitoring as well. And so I'm between B and C. However, I think that we rotate the credentials specifically for the exploited services and then go back in when we have a moment to do a full credential rotation. I always say this too. Don't just rotate the password, rotate like the service name as well, because people always forget that. That's a big gap in like if somebody gets into your environment, then they know half of the network already, even if you change your password. And I think that it's evidence driven that we can go through and look at our APIs, we can look at the services, and we don't have to do a full shutdown of the environment. Given that we've already voted against it, it doesn't make sense from an AppSec perspective to go in and shut everything down and do full privilege access shutdown. Also, given the fact that it's likely to delay and slow our response. And I don't want to just do a hotfix in place, because I think that this also gives us the opportunity to leave access and sessions open that may mirror what we've already seen that we just maybe haven't caught yet. So I think that's for all those reasons I'm leaning most heavily toward B.
Okay, super, thank you. Dan and Michaela are at the water tower, or whatever, the water cooler. And Michaela, you're obviously concerned, guys, if you're going to fix this now, please don't have it fixing and then another fixing and then another fixing, because I don't know how to communicate that. But Dan, what are you and Dan and Michaela are at the water. What are your concerns right now? What are you hoping to kind of push forward with?
Yeah, I know, Michaela, my biggest concern is that now we know that there was adversarial action. This wasn't just a bad patch, which means it's much more serious. And I'm inclined to stop everything so we can clearly say we've cut all access and we've got the situation under control. That said, what Eddie I rely on the technical expertise of the AppSec team, because they're the ones who actually designed it and fixed it. And if Eddie feels confident that we can revoke, that we get solid containment, revoking and just with minimal disruption to the business, that'll keep my phone from ringing from Paypool folks who are wondering what's going on and why haven't we fixed everything immediately. And still give us I'm leaning on AppSec's technical recommendations to provide us the kind of coverage we need. That's where I'm sitting right now. I'm torn between A and B.
Cool. Michaela, you're at the cooler.
Yeah, so whatever you want to do from a technical point of view, we need a very clear message out to the people who are being affected right now. And I would like to know, how long is it going to be before, if you take this option about, containing, how do we know that the attacker's no longer here? And did I hear you say something about a contractor?
Yes.
Okay, so, can we perhaps bring in them, in terms of, we don't want it all the heat to be on us. We can go out and say, it was like a third party instance and we're working on it type thing. Would that be fair?
I
It
think
was a
that's
third party
accurate
support
assessment.
contractor. So yeah, we can definitely put them under the bus for sure. Definitely.
In the nicest
We just
possible way.
yeah, exactly. And now you have just highlighted some of the hardest challenges around PR. If you've got people who cause this, but yet you're in the limelight, do you bring them in or do you hold them out? And I think your point is very valid, a balanced approach, but yet helping the audience know and the public this isn't directly vended. Right. Okay, Kelvin, what are we doing on legal?
Yeah, I think at this point we should be treating this as a confirmed unauthorized access. We, a potential implication on having to do a breach and disclosure because we have 4.2 million. We don't know what data, but we need to do that analysis. Another concern that I have is we started with PCI, but now if we have, for example, clients in Europe, we need to be thinking about GDPR, for example, that has a very high bar for privacy. So we need to think globally, not only maybe US focus, given the situation. Also, again, I don't want to make a technical decision from a legal point of view, but if we know compromised tokens, we should revoke them immediately. I think it's very hard for us to justify not doing that because we want to keep the business running, right? The business is important, and we have to keep the customer happy and have the profit coming in. But also, if we have to defend this legally, it's going to be very hard for us to defend that we took the profit over protecting our clients, right?
Gotcha.
So this is the position that I have at this point.
Okay, gotcha. And I'm sure there's third-party lawyers that are giving advice and all that. So the bills are really mounting up here because, when we do this type of analysis on millions and millions of records, the cost of this breach now, directly and indirectly, is skyrocketing. Gene, what do we want to do with the third-party contractor part? What's your expert input on the whole contractor element relating to the impact?
What's really concerning me is the encrypted data, because we haven't confirmed exfiltration yet. And I think we need to be careful about not understating that to our vendors, because we can't confirm that the data left our environment yet. But we also want to be transparent about that. And again, I am concerned about our data breach notification obligations, especially around PCI, and what kind of obligation that we're under with the contractor, and our communication. If, I do think that our communication needs to include the contractor and how they are assisting us, and contractually what the roles and responsibilities are.
Fantastic. Well, this is why we've got you there, Gene, because I know Dan will be delighted to get that help from you to bring that on as a better understanding of what the contractor is, and hopefully get an access to their laptop, because I'm sure Dan will want forensics on that. Okay, we've got our 21 votes, so we're closing our voting now. Again, we've got a unanimous decision here, which is great. If that was more split, 33, 33, 33, we might have the kind of lock in the room where people don't know what decision we should make. But obviously, yeah, from an impact point of view, we are making decisions here which have sizable business disruption impacts, and which is understandable considering what's there. But what we didn't vote for was the things where there was more risk introduced but less operational impact. So you guys are guiding us more towards taking the pain now to fix the problem quicker, instead of having the problem just keep going down the road. So I can see where your head is at in that. All right. What's nice is that the decision confidence is getting stronger here. So we've kind of got a few more on the strong side, which is good. So I'm liking that. Either your confidence is just growing, or this particular issue is something some of you folks have experience with. All right. Now, as we move to the last inject, I need you guys to help me bring it in, I think is the term, right? Bring it home, maybe. Bring it in or bring it home. One or the other. I need you to help me get to the point where we're contained, we're recovered, and we're trying to wrap up things. We're not there yet, but this is what I need help from you guys. Now, to do that, this decision will be the last one, and it'll be your key one. Here we have the brand element. PayPool has a huge brand, and they're not happy. The social media is ablaze with unverified claims that Venmo is hiding a massive data breach. You guys talked about this. A viral Twitter X thread alleges that the company has been compromised for weeks and is now covering up. PTI Consulting, which is an external crisis comms company, send an urgent brief. Without immediate proactive communication, the company risks permanent brand erosion and customer exits. PTI recommends either a live press conference to expose all known facts or a coordinated Q&A campaign across multiple social channels. Internal teams are stretched thin. You guys are really tired now as well, right? So some folks might have needed days off because they've been on for 72 or many days straight. Obviously, the internal teams are stretched due to managing the technical response and are hesitant to divert resources to PR. So the indicators here, obviously the viral social media rumors, PTI warns of an irreversible brand, internal teams are stretched and pressure to communicate publicly before full forensics is complete is mounting, and the risk of customer exodus if narrative is not controlled. So this is where I need you guys to help make a decision as it relates to what we're going to do to help bring down the temperature. Here's a copy of the email from the bad guy, which everyone got a copy of, shared around with the leadership team. It gives weight and credit to some of the statements the threat actor is making. However, they're not fully confirmed. But when you have an actor like this who is known to be doing this with other customers, your threat intelligence team will be able to help you know you should believe their statements because they've always been credible with the statements they've made with previous customers. All right. Now what we need to do is look at how Venmo will manage this brand crisis. If we get this right, you guys can help me close this off, which it's been pretty frantic. So do we do the live press conference? Has that historically worked with companies? Obviously, we see CEOs going out and doing narrative on media. I know that because I've worked at companies where the CEO went on Mad Men or whatever his name is, Kramer or something. I don't know what his name is. But they went on with him, talked about it, right? So do you hold an immediate press conference exposing all known facts, accepting the risk of public panic and incomplete information? Or do you launch PTI's recommended social media campaign to control the narrative, diverting significant team resources from the technical response, which can have follow-on issues? Yes, Cassidy, we do pay PTI, but your insurance will cover it. Don't worry. Ignore PTI's urgency and focus all resources on technical recovery, leaving the public narrative unmanaged for now. Okay. So this is our last decision, guys. This is a tough one. I've got 6 votes in. It ain't easy, but this is, I need you guys to bear in mind the impact where we've already really taken a lot of whacks from the last 2 injects in terms of disrupting the business. And we need some focus here to make a right decision. I mean, whatever is a right decision. Okay, let's obviously start with Michaela. This is, you know, you've, I hope you got a bit of sleep last night, but where are we? What are we thinking? And you take it from here.
Okay, so we do have a page about the incident just to keep people up to date with what information we can give them. One thing I'm wondering is how good is our CEO in terms of press? because if they're really good and charismatic and stuff, then I would be leaning towards the live press conference on the basis that that can sort of, in some organizations that can work well, but also if they're not good in front of the camera, then that could work really badly, in which case I'd be leaning towards B. So very much, I think, depends on that at the moment for me. The other thing that we'd be throwing into our messaging, now that we do know we have that hacker, is that this is now a criminal investigation. And so, we're limited with what we can say. But obviously, giving advice in terms of what people can do to protect themselves from that point of view, because yes, our competitors are obviously ramping up their own advertising and trying to steal our customers. So,
gotcha. Okay, Kelvin, how can you support here? What concerns do we have from legal?
Yeah, I would reject having a live press conference at this point in time. I think there is still many unknowns. And also, we come into the risk, even if we send our CEO, of the CEO saying something that we may regret later in a court, in a legal case. So my better advice at this point would be to have a good statement that we put together, centralize, making sure that we have different people reviewing it, and we centralize the approval. And for common questions, we have an FAQ. That way we can take care of the concern that people may have without putting ourselves into additional legal risk later on down the line. That's my point at this point.
Gotcha. And Dan, from your side?
I don't have a lot of impact or thought on the discussion publicly. I'm still mainly focused on what do we know internally, where are we with containment and restoration of, getting all that $47 million through. I think the biggest thing we can do is actually get everything flowing properly and being able to demonstrate what we know about the attack and fixing it. So really my focus is internally making sure the team is getting rest when they can, bringing in additional support through outside contractors, through cyber insurance, through those other pieces, and focusing mainly on those restoration pieces. I'll leave the communications to the people who are better speakers.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I'll echo that,
Please, yeah.
and real quick. From my understanding of the structure of this whole tabletop, we have technical incident response and comms at this point. We have work to do from a technical perspective, but it seems like the larger issues about making sure that we have logs that are captured appropriately, that we are sound forensically, etc., is going to be handled by somebody outside of the firm at this point, somebody who gets paid more than I do. And so I would reject both A and B. One, I would reject A because the first question they're going to ask is what happened, how long, how many records, etc. And this is going to speak directly to the data gap that we had mentioned earlier. I dropped it into the chat, but I forgot to mention it in my earlier statement for Inject 2 that without having this data gap of monitoring closed, then we're really flying blind in our response. So I will reject that wholesale because I think it's going to be the first point that would be brought up, which is why I would advise against a live press conference. Similarly, we can continue working internally, but this isn't going to deal with the actual issue that we're dealing with now, which is the customer response side. So in this case, I think it's most appropriate to give the technical response the support that it needs from an external perspective, as Dan was saying, but also I feel like it's appropriate to divert the limited resources we have now to focus on PR.
Gotcha. And Jean, what would you see A, B, or C as a priority at this point, just even from your experience?
Right, and I'll just make this really quick. I went with A. We need, just because we got a notice from an attacker, and I know that some information was disclosed externally already, is we still need to continue an investigation. And I think coaching our CEO to keep it brief, keep it honest. We're still investigating is the best way to go to stop the bleeding when it comes to PR. Also, from a vendor management standpoint, I think since this is a criminal case, we need to trigger our right to audit. To thoroughly look at all avenues of where this came from, what the attack vector was, and if there's any persistence and how we can stop that.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. Those are super relevant points as well. Okay, so we can see here you guys kept the values under the radar in terms of causing a systemic issue relating to the business. So we're going to survive this, and that's only because of your decisions here. Had you chosen different decisions, this graph could have peaked out past the 100 and caused Venmo to have more of a chronic and systemic issue for its future stability. So with that, obviously, I have to thank everyone for the decisions that you guys made here. As we can see here, the confidence level peaked up again around the high levels of the decision, strong confidence, and then the 64% was great for B. I can see a lot of the conversation on the right. We are obviously now around for the next 15 minutes to just talk about an after action and debriefing for those who want to chat. But I would like to thank, obviously, the critical experts who gave input at the right time and explained where they weren't relevant at the right time. So to Dan, Eddie, Stan, Michaela, Kelvin, thank you. And Jean, you are the best crisis response team I've worked with. And thank you, everyone, for all the voting that you did.
That's saying something.
Kelvin,